So this is the 2022 Tesla Model 3, and I find that the best reviews out there are the long-term reviews because it gives you a good indication on how your car is going to hold up over the next few years, because this is a big purchase for a lot of people. Now, I will say, out of all the cars I've bought, this is the only car where I walked into a dealership with a ruler. Because of all the earlier quality control issues that it had, people reporting big panel gaps, I looked like a maniac measuring the space between the doors and the back of the trunk. Now, good news is quality control has gotten much better, and I don't have those problems with this car. In fact, I don't have any of the dreaded mist on the back of your light from water seeping in or anything like that. Everything is holding up perfectly. In fact, the only accident that I've been to on this car has been my fault. When I was reversing the car out of my carport, the little plastic piece over here broke, but that's about it. Everything else has been working perfectly. Now, this is the long-range version, and this one costs a little bit more than the rear motor version. I bought it because I live here in Canada and we have a ton of snow, so I want four-wheel drive, like it's an absolute must. But the only modification I made to this car was actually the windows. I put tinted windows on it just because that helps in the summertime when there's a lot of heat and the sun is coming in. The air conditioning doesn't have to work as hard. Now, one thing I don't like about the Tesla Model 3, and this is because the glass comes all the way down towards the back, is that it eats into the opening of the actual trunk. And look, I'm a Canadian guy, okay? I live here in Toronto. I play a lot of hockey. I can get a hockey bag in here. Like, once you're in, there's a ton of space inside of here. Like, this is a pretty big trunk, okay? But getting a hockey bag inside of here, you have to like really push it in order for it to go into the back seat. I do wish there was a little ski hole back there so I can slide my sticks in. But usually I have to pull down the seat if I want to put my hockey stick inside. I also had one other gripe with getting into the car. Now, usually it does a fantastic job of not having to carry your key. So I could just literally walk up to the car, the mirrors would open and the doors would unlock. But I did have a couple of issues where that didn't happen. It could be kind of scary if you don't have your physical key on you. And what I found was the best way to overcome that hiccup was to basically turn off Bluetooth and turn it back on, and then sometimes the car will detect it. The biggest issue I had was with the iPhone a couple of times where the car wouldn't detect it at all, and I had to pull out my Android phone, which at the time was a Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4, to unlock the car. Now, granted, this has only happened twice, but it always worries me that like one day I'll be somewhere, not have my physical card on me, and then I can't get back into the car. Now, it's not too often that I'm a rear passenger in my own car. I do most of the driving, but if you are planning on buying this for long trips, you will have quite a bit of space in the back. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of room under the front seat or the passenger seat to put your feet under, just because when you're sitting down, you're kind of slanted upwards due to the battery position, and that places your knees a little too close to your chest, so it might feel a bit uncomfortable for some people. Now, I'm 5'11", and this is what I look like in the back seat of the car, and this is exactly the driving position that I'd be in if I was driving it. In terms of overall quality of materials, it's been holding up very, very well. Like, there's no major cracks or rips in the vegan leather, and I think it's going to look just as good for the next 2 years to come. So after 2 years of almost driving this car, I got some good things and bad things about it. For one, I love the way the seats feel. They're very big, they're comfortable. The best way to describe it is like you're sitting on a sofa and you're just driving your car. But the suspension on this car is not the greatest. I live in Toronto and the roads are absolutely terrible. And if I go over a big bump, the car handles it okay. But in all the tiny little cracks in the roads, you really feel it with this car. The acceleration on this car is insane. Like, I mostly drive it on comfort mode like an old lady just to keep it smooth as possible. But like when you want to drive fast, it picks up very quickly like most electrical cars. The interior, super minimal, and look, again, this is a subjective thing. Not everyone's gonna like the interior of this car. It feels very hospital-like. Some people would say it has no personality, but it feels like a proper piece of tech. And that's what I love about this car compared to other ones. Like, when I get in it, it feels like I'm messing around with my iPhone or my Android device, you know? The only thing I'm still not used to is not having buttons. Like changing the temperature, not a problem. Opening the doors, locking it, not an issue. Changing your songs, not an issue. It's the little things. Like if my kids want the windows unlocked, I gotta fiddle through the menus to find it, and that can be kind of dangerous when you're driving. The good news though is because you don't have a little screen in front of the steering wheel, is you get more viewing experience when you're looking straight out the front window, and that just makes the road feel a bit more open. Now, if you are going to be using Sentry mode on this, you will be sucking a lot more battery life out of the car. I find that it burns between 6 to 7% extra battery per day if you leave Sentry mode on. Now, if you go home, you can have it selected as one of your favorite locations, so Sentry mode won't work and you can reduce the battery that way. But if you're always going to leave it on, expect to go through 6 to 7% per day. Now, in terms of anxiety, I haven't had an experience where I almost ran out of battery. The charging situation here in North America is actually quite fantastic. Tesla owns the charging situation. Like for example, I go to the cottage a lot. It's about a 3-hour drive, and there's at least 4 different locations that I can charge my car, and 2 of them have supercharging. So it's never been an issue for me. Obviously, if you have the opportunity, get a charger for your home. That's going to make your life a lot easier. And that's the one thing that I love about electric vehicles. It's just easier. You know how nice it is not having to go to a gas station and pump your car? I get home, I plug it in, I wake up in the morning, and it's completely charged, and I don't have to worry about it. Now, I don't have full self-driving on this car. I personally don't think it's worth an extra 10 grand when it's still a beta feature. But recently, there has been an update to the car to implement auto steer, where it basically self-drives in the lane that you're driving in. And look, it works great. It makes driving a long period of time a lot more enjoyable, because there's just sometimes you want to, let the car do its thing while, you want to readjust yourself. But I just don't feel like paying an extra 10 grand for a feature that you can't transfer with you to a new car is worth it. And still, all the little issues people are having with it, it just doesn't feel very secure to use on a daily basis. The other thing I don't like about this car, and you can probably hear it while I'm driving, is the road noise. There's now double panes on the side windows, which is great, but there's still a lot of wind noise that seeps into the car, and because it's such a heavy vehicle, you do get a lot of road noise from the tires. Now, right now you can hear it very well because I'm driving over a gravel road. It's going to be loud on most cars, but I do find it's a bit louder on this car compared to my wife's, which is a normal gas vehicle. The one question I know a lot of you are going to ask is, how is the battery life holding up after 2 years? And look, it's been solid. Like, I haven't noticed any degradation so far. I'm getting the exact same range every time I travel up to go up north. It feels the same. I get about 30 to 35% when I arrive. And when I'm in the city, I only charge the car up to 80% so that I can preserve the battery life as long as possible. Now, there is some discussion whether 80 or 90 is better. Personally, from what I've read, 80 just seems to be the better spot if you're driving short distances a lot. But obviously, if you're driving far all the time, then yes, charge it up to 90%. Generally, it's not a good idea to go to 100% because you will degrade the battery faster. Now, if you have to do this every once in a while, fine, do it. Like, it's not going to make that big of a difference. But if you can avoid it, I wouldn't go past 90% in terms of charging. The one thing that I absolutely love is regenerative driving. I know it's talked a lot about in other Tesla videos, but until you experience it yourself, you learn to appreciate it. Just taking your foot off the gas and having the car stop naturally makes a big difference because you get some of that energy back and it goes into your battery. And I find that my brakes are in such good condition because I never actually use them. In fact, the only time I use them is if I have to perform an emergency stop. Now, the downfall to this is that you do build up a lot of rotor rust, and every once in a while it's just a good idea to slam on the brakes or use the brakes to get rid of that rust so that you don't degrade them. And also, it's very important after every 2 years you get your brake fluids checked, especially since you're not using them as often as you should. So we're finally off a gravel road, and this is what the car sounds like with no rocks underneath it. So a little bit quieter, but I can still hear a lot of wind noise and of course the tires driving on the road. In terms of actual quality control, do things creak and make a lot of noises? Overall, it's been pretty good. Like, the only creaking that I get from this car is if I'm leaning a bit to the right, then the seat rubs on the glove box and you can hear creaking from the leather. But if I sit perfectly straight or a little bit to the left, everything's okay. Now, on my wife's car, she drives a Lincoln Corsair. I can lean to the right and there's no creaking. So maybe the seat's a bit too close to the middle. So the big question, would I actually buy a Tesla today, 2 years later? And the short answer is yes. Out of all the electrical EVs that are currently on the market, if your main priority is tech, Tesla is still the way to go. But if you're more of a car enthusiast and you want luxury and smoothness and regular car features, there are other EVs out there that just do a better job. Now I'm going to be reviewing some of those EVs, so make sure to like and follow me so you don't miss a video on that. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to hit the like button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.